What's up, everybody? You are listening to Vantage Point on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara. We are coming at you live from under Stork Tower here on the campus of UCSB. I am your host, Alec Nolan. Seeing may be believing, but hearing is definitely feeling, and I cannot believe we have made it to episode 7 of my experiment here, and I am riding solo tonight, so strap yourself in. I have a great show for you guys tonight if you love talking about sports, and if you love Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine, because that's just a great combo. I don't care who you are, and we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff on the show, for anything from sports to some movies to my movie reviews and even my top 5 movies of 2016 as we wrapped things up last week with the Academy Awards. Now, I wanted to open the show talking about the NFL Combine and why it really isn't that big of a deal, in my opinion. I mean, it can be to some teams, to some GMs, because that seems to be the buzz all the time, is the Combine. But this past weekend, the NFL hosted their annual Combine, or rather what I like to call the overemphasized and overdiscussed display of short bursts of speed and strength by large men in tights. Now, let me remind you, this is essentially an invite party only, with only the very best talent attending the Combine, which seeks to provide measurables of speed, strength, and agility to NFL scouts and GMs in order to better understand and better process a player's certain draft value or draft stock. Now, the NFL, or the Shield as we like to call it, has an uncanny ability to constantly draw attention to itself even when the actual season is not happening, because the NFL squeezes every storyline possible out of their 365-year calendar. 365-day calendar. Let's be honest, they do. They always find a way to make it on ESPN, Fox Sports. They always make the headlines. They are the king. They own the throne. And that is why they own a day of the week, and that is why they own 2 other nights of the week on Thursday nights and Monday nights. This is what they do. They just know how to make headlines even when nothing that interesting is happening. They dominate television ratings. The Super Bowl is the most watched thing in the entire country. We Americans love football. We love watching it on Sundays. We love drinking beer on Sundays, hanging out with our friends, talking about football, even when it's not happening. Twitter blows up with football. Facebook blows up with football. It's just the way it is. Now, while the NBA is in full swing, baseball is fast approaching. March Madness is nearly upon us. Trump is claiming wiretapping, and Ben Carson continues to prove he is, in fact, a lot dumber than he looks with his comments yesterday. They're very controversial, saying that slaves were immigrants. Anyway, besides the point, our main discussion in the media has focused on the king of them all, and that's the NFL, with its combine display in full effect. So, for years and years, these GM and scouts, at least from what I can tell, seem to drool over the combine as if it is the tell-all tale, as if it is the way to validate and understand draft value and draft stock. And although I do think it is important, and I do think physical attributes are important, especially in a sport where you hit each other and try and run and catch a ball and get away from each other and block each other, it's a game of strength, of agility, of speed. I do think those things are important. However, there are many players that have gone full beast mode at the Combine specifically, but their actual careers never manifested into anything relevant. And these are, basically this made me think of what my dad used to tell me a couple years ago. He said, "Oh yeah, that guy's a range player." What are you talking about? And this is the perfect comparison. There are those guys that go out there and hit a bucket of range balls, a couple bucket of range balls before they ever even start teeing off, before they play 18 holes. They have to do it. And they may be the best driving range player you've ever seen. They can hit 250, 300 off the driving range. Oh, they hit their 7-iron great. They hit their 5-iron great. Oh my gosh, they can chip, they can putt, they can do it all. They can do it all in the driving range. But the second they tee off on that first hole, it's all gone. It's almost like they're a different person. They're a different player. They forgot everything. And my dad referred to those guys as range players. Now, my dad tries to golf at least once a week. And he's a very solid player. Not the same player he used to be, and that's just because he's getting older, and that's no need to make fun of him. I'm not going to say his age, but he's good. He can beat me still. He can beat a lot of people I know. He's very solid. But something interesting about my dad is he never hits before. Why? He says he doesn't want to. Doesn't want to get into his own head before. He knows how he plays. He knows what he's capable of. He just goes out there and has a good time. He's not playing professionally. You know, he's hanging out with his friends, having a good time. But he said there are guys out there as range players. And these guys that I'm about to talk about are the range players. They could do it all in a practice setting. They could do it all when people are measuring things. But as soon as the lights come on, as soon as the whistle blows, as soon as it's showtime, they don't have it anymore. They just don't. So we have our list of 5, I don't want to call them NFL busts, but I want to say 5 combine to NFL transition busts, to be a little more specific. So at number 5, we have DeMarcus Van Dyke, cornerback out of Miami, the U. Back in 2011, DeMarcus ran a 4.2840, which was at the time the 4th fastest, now the 5th fastest, as John Ross breaks that record that Chris Johnson set about 10 years ago, almost now. Wow. He ran a 4.22. So at a 4.28, DeMarcus Van Dyke ran the 5th fastest time ever since electronic timing began in 99. So at a height of 6'1", 180 pounds, looks to be a great draft choice. Drafted in the 3rd round overall by the Oakland Raiders, never received much playing time, finished his career with 17 tackles, 1 interception. Bust. Incredible combine numbers. Running that fast, you think he'd be able to lock down the wide receivers at the respective position, but he couldn't. Never did much. So that is DeMarcus Van Dyke at number 5. Number 4, Stephen Hill, wide receiver, Georgia Tech. In 2012, Hill selected 43rd overall in the 2nd round by the New York Jets after busting out an incredible 4.3640 at 6'4", 215 pounds. These are Randy Moss type stats here. These are Randy Moss type attributes, but he didn't do anything. Well, he did a little bit. 45 receptions, 595 yards, 4 touchdowns, and eventually was released by the Carolina Panthers in 2015. So a short-lived career. Didn't do much. 4.3 speed at that size, you thought, wow. Never did anything. Could never translate it. Range player. Number 3. This guy, many people argue, defensive end out of Boston College, argue that really changed the landscape of preparing for the combine and giving it more meaning to a player's draft stock and draft value to GMs and owners. So back in 95, Mamula at 6'4", 250 pounds posts really an unheard of 4.5840 and a vertical of 38.5 inches, which is pretty much the same as Odell Beckham Jr., but he is about 6'8", 181, or excuse me, he's about 6 feet, 180, 190. Mike Mamula is a giant defensive end at 6'4", 250 pounds, and he's doing the same thing. So the Philadelphia Eagles freak out over this. They draft up 5 spots from number 12 to number 7, trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and select Mamula. And although Mamula played relatively well throughout his career, about a 5-year career from 95 to 2000, he's always known as the guy that was picked instead of Warren Sapp, who eventually went on to become a Hall of Famer and Super Bowl champion. So Mamula, not as big of a bust as these other guys, but once again proving that the combine numbers don't tell you everything. They can't. They just can't. And that's why I think we shouldn't make such a big deal about it when these guys do these things, because we don't know anything yet. They haven't even snapped a ball in the NFL yet. They haven't even been drafted yet. Applaud them, but don't praise them as if they are the answer to everything, because you don't know that yet. So don't try and act like you do, even though hundreds of people do every single day. All right, moving to number 2, and this one's personal for me because I'm a Vikings fan. I remember this draft choice. Troy Williamson, wide receiver, South Carolina. So desperate to replace Randy Moss after trading him to the Oakland Raiders back in 2005, the Minnesota Vikings select Williamson 7th overall in 2005. So he had an amazing 4.340, and he did nothing, ever. And trust me, I remember this, because all I did was wait for Troy Williamson to do something, and he never did. Troy Williamson couldn't catch a cold. 4 touchdowns in 5 years of play with the Vikings and the Jaguars. I doubt you ever even heard of him, but he's always known as probably the most highly touted wide receiver early in a round to really never do jack squat. So running a 4.340 doesn't mean anything if you can't catch the ball. All right, and now our number 1, Vernon Gholston, defensive end out of Ohio State. And Gholston, interesting. So he only played a couple seasons, and at the defensive end position, he pretty much put up the identical numbers as Mamula. I mean, running like a 4.5, and he's got this great vert, and he's just a freak athlete, 6'4", 260 pounds. You thought, wow, Vernon Gholston, this guy's going to be a great, great defensive end for the New York Jets. It's exactly what they need. Didn't do anything. Played a couple seasons, and he never, I repeat, never recorded a sack. I'm not even making that up. He never had a sack. So not only a combine to pro bust, but one of the greatest flops ever in draft history. I mean, the guy never got a sack, and he played defensive end, and he was drafted in the 1st round. Terrible, terrible. And as I said at the beginning, My whole point of this comparison is to show you guys out there that sometimes we can't just be sitting there on our phone and just drooling and talking about these guys as if they're the meaning to everything. The NFL, they're the king. I'm not doubting that. They generate $10 billion a year. But you cannot measure certain things. There are intangibles. Tom Brady had a terrible 40. He has 5 Super Bowl rings. He can fit one on each hand, or each finger on his hand. Aaron Rodgers didn't have as good of a combine as maybe a guy like Michael Vick. Not as fast. Maybe not as good of certain, physical attributes. Doesn't matter. It's the intangibles. Do they win? Are they smart? Can they adjust to the NFL? Can they rely on more than just their athleticism? Can they rely on work ethic? The X's and the O's. The NFL is a chess match. Everyone is strong. Everyone is athletic. Everybody's great. Everyone has that talent. But it's a chess match. Can you beat him in the trenches? Can you beat him in the pre-snap? How are you under pressure? How are you with money, with fame? How are you with fans? How are you with criticism? How are you with adjusting to life in the NFL? Can you take it serious? Can you grow up? Can you mature? Can you buy into our system, our culture? Can you be a role model? This isn't college football anymore. This is a profession. And although I think the combine is great and I find it incredibly interesting, sometimes we have to remember some people are range players and some people are actual players. You're listening to KCSB FM 91.9, Vantage Point with your host, Alec, Nolan.